Hey everyone, this is Philipp, and this is the best of the week for the Everyday Fighter podcast.
So your brain controls your central nervous system. So your central nervous system, you've heard of it before. There's two branches of your central nervous system. You have the fight or flight branch, which is the branch that gets you all fired up and ready to go. And then you have the rest and digest branch, where it's when you're more calm and more relaxed. When you're in the fight or flight state, your body cannot heal. You have high levels of cortisol. You basically shut off the immune system. You shut off important digestive processes, and you focus all of the energy on the whatever the stressor is, whatever's so creating the fear or the excitement.
So it's not necessarily just like, we talk about fight or flight. Typically, it's like, well, if you're a caveman, right? But I mean, even now, that could come from stress from work, stress from family.
Just it could be sitting in traffic. It's your thoughts. So this is where it comes down to, and I'll make it more simple. Your thoughts dictate what branch of the nervous system you're in. The other branch is the parasympathetic, and this is considered, a lot of people call it the rest and digest branch of the nervous system. This is when your immune system starts to repair your body. This is when you recover. You need to spend a lot of time in this part of the nerve, this branch where you're in this rest and digest state, where you're more relaxed. You need to balance that out. If that becomes imbalanced because you have the sympathetic nervous system that's overly stimulated, that can create disease. That can exacerbate underlying disease. So if there's something already going on, if there's some issues already at play, and then you have this nervous system that's consistently activated because you have these thoughts in your head that are stressful, and they create a release of cortisol. That continuous activation of cortisol affects your sleep, affects the way that your body composition looks. It can affect your entire body. So that's where the thoughts are extremely important. I have a podcast I run 5 days a week called Your Nutrition Prescription. And one day a week, all I do is I mostly talk about thoughts and mindset and that type of thing, because, what you're thinking about, what's going on, is what creates your current physiological state. That creates an unhealthy body or potentially a healthier body, dependent on what your physiological state is, mostly.
So physically, like even down to the cell level, it's not just what you're taking in terms of nutrition that's affecting that, but it's also what's going on in here in your brain, the thoughts you have, the emotions that you're creating, because that will affect the types of chemicals that your body is creating.
Yes, exactly. And that will affect your digestion, because if you're in traffic, so let's say, for example, two different people. One eats a meal and then they're driving in traffic and it stresses them out. It just makes their central nervous system activated.
Yeah, I get pretty activated.
Okay, their GI tract. So when you're tense, when you're stressed, you're tense. Your GI tract tenses up. The food does not move down your GI tract the same way that it would, or that it does in the other person who is driving through the same traffic and says, "Oh, traffic, awesome. This is a great opportunity for me to listen to this podcast that I've been wanting to listen to, of this positive individual who's going to talk about this great topic that uplifts me." So they put that on, and they have this other mindset of, not traffic is the worst and the devil, but traffic is an opportunity for them to catch up on something, and they completely switch the way that they perceive it. That person's going to digest their food better than the person who's sitting in traffic detesting it. So over time, that could potentially lead to digestive disorders just from being in a high stress state. This has been shown in clinical trials before. Stress is strongly related to irritable bowel syndrome. Meditation, hypnosis, yoga, they all improve irritable bowel syndrome because they help to relax the GI tract, when they help to relax the brain and lower the stress levels.
Well, you're in a unique situation because you still continue to have your fingers on the pulse of research, right? You're still in that. You're looking at the papers. You're evaluating all of that stuff. Granted, it's probably Greek to most of us, me and others as well. A lot of technical type of things in there. But is that something that is available to us in some way? You know, I mean, it's like, if I look at the news, which I try not to, if I look at the latest, day shows, daytime talk show segment, it's not talking about this kind of stuff, right? Because, and the fact is, like, you're saying, hey, there are clinical trials. This is science. There's science behind this, and these are the things that are working, right? But that's not what you're hearing. You're hearing of, I don't know, the latest.
A new drug that might be able to help with irritable bowel syndrome. And
the latest diet or whatever. It's like, just kind of feeding kind of like the ease that we talked about earlier. Is there a way to switch that up? I mean, is that a cultural thing? Is that a system?
Popular media has an agenda, and it's always going to be junk information. So turn that stuff off. Turn off the news. Turn off all of that. Find some high quality sources of information. Like I run a podcast, and even on my podcast, I refer you to other people's podcasts who do good health and nutrition podcasts as well. So you don't have to just look for mine, but it's people that I've learned from and people that I know are putting out high quality information. Not everyone's putting out high quality information. Some people are telling you butter in your coffee is going to make you superhuman. That's nonsense. And I know some people might get mad about that listening, but it's nonsense. The only redeeming quality of butter is that it has a small amount of butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid that helps to rebuild the gastrointestinal tract and can provide a good fuel source for the brain. But it has a small amount of that. You can get that from eating a little bit of cold rice, which is it's just nothing spectacular. So stay away from the sensationalist stuff. Start my podcast called Your Nutrition Prescription. You can listen to others as well that I recommend. Just try to find some good sources. You want people to tell you pros and cons. You don't want someone to say keto for everybody. Everybody should be keto. If they're saying that, they have an agenda or they just don't know. Like they don't really understand the physiology, which I see very frequently, or they have an agenda. There's a lot of people out there that are well-meaning, but they just don't understand the physiology, and that's why they think that everybody should be keto. Is they don't know genetics, they don't study that, they don't read research papers. There's a lot of people who have big businesses and sell a lot of products and promote diets that they don't really know the science. They had a six-pack and then they kind of put some media promotion behind that, and they were on the cover of Men's Health or something, and then they took that and ran with it, and now they're giving people nutrition advice. But sometimes it's not the most high quality information. So look for someone who's going to tell you the pros and cons. Some of my clients, I put them on keto. Some of them, most of them not. And when you listen to my podcast, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why going very low carb might not be a good idea, but also some benefits that you can get from doing that. I'm going to tell you why fasting is great in most cases, but where in some cases it might not be. And most people aren't giving you that. And there are a few people that are, and I promote those people as well. I'm happy to, there's a guy named Sean Stevenson who has a Modern Health show. I'm sure most people have heard about him. A guy named Dr. Cabral, who's really good, who has a show called The Cabral Concept. Just, they're putting out excellent information. So it's available. It's just, sometimes you have to find it. If you happen to be listening to this show, you can go check out mine or check out one of their podcasts, the two that I just mentioned, and you will find a really high quality source of information.
It's something that really strikes me. It's very important, right? Because we got a lot of thoughts in our head, right? And a lot of them, we decide to let go. Some we hold on to, right? Some we hold on to enough that we start thinking it on a more consistent basis. But then some of those thoughts we think so much that it actually comes out in words, when someone says something, particularly on a frequent basis, then that's a very dominant thought for them. I remember another time with a good friend of mine. This was actually at the beginning when we first kind of started to get to know each other. We were both in kind of an informal business mastermind with one or two other guys, and during the first meetup that we had, it was at some restaurant somewhere. He had a frequent talk track as well, and his talk track was I don't know, right? So he would talk about some business idea he had, go through. It's like, yeah, I was thinking about doing this, and I think it'd be good for this and that, but I don't know. And he said that on a pretty frequent basis. I could swear he said at least half a dozen times in a matter of an hour. At the time, even though we were in a business mastermind and part of that is just kind of holding each other accountable, I didn't feel like I knew him well enough to actually say something, but it definitely stuck out for me, right? And we ended up going our separate ways after our meeting, but it still kind of stuck in me. I was like, you know what, Philip, you're not really serving him by keeping this to yourself. So what I ended up doing is I emailed him, and I said, hey man, it was awesome meeting up, and I think we're onto something here. And I said, but one thing I did want to mention to you is that I noticed that you said this a lot. I noticed that you said, I don't know, at the end of a lot of the things you're talking about. And I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but that's something you probably want to be more cognizant of. And again, we're very good friends now. We actually, we're business partners for a while as well. But that was something where it kind of struck me. If it's coming out of your mouth, it's a big deal, right? I tell those stories as examples, but I am far, far from perfect, and I hope you kind of get that as we're talking here as well. That I'm not the thought police, and I'm not anybody that should be held to any higher standard than anyone else. I make those exact same mistakes.